Hello, I'm Carrie.
And I'm Emily.
And we are the voices of A Nice Cup of History.
We know it's been a little while. We didn't expect it to be this long.
Life kind of got in the way.
Yes.
Yeah, repeatedly.
But we are back and hopefully here
Frequent.
to be more frequent.
Yeah, we plan to be frequent again.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're doing so well.
We were, but, things happened and the world has got a little bit crazy lately.
Yeah.
So, this week it's time to visit a place.
We haven't done a place in a while.
We haven't. I mean, in fairness, travel has been limited lately.
Fact.
So why don't you pack your metaphorical bags and take a trip with us all the way to Colombia. So we're going to take a stroll through the streets and history of her capital, Bogota. This one was pretty difficult to research, not because, like we usually find, there's big gaps in the knowledge or hardly anything written down or known, but actually there was a heck of a lot written down. And we wanted to sift through it to give you the information you need without making this a long episode.
Yeah, and I will just put in a disclaimer here. Anyone who listens to our podcast since the beginning will know that I don't speak well.
Fair.
Carrie was taking a drink at that point. My understanding of different languages and how to pronounce things isn't great in English, let alone any other language.
You're linguistically challenged.
I am. Now, we're not native speakers of Spanish or
Chibcha.
That's a start. So whilst we have taken care to research pronunciations, and by we mean Carrie, we mean absolutely no offence should we fudge them up a little bit. I mean, I probably won't be talking any of the Spanish names.
Yeah.
Which is what we normally do, and where I just stop talking and Carrie says the word.
And I will also apologise if the beautiful Spanish language is spoken with a decidedly Brummy accent.
And that's what you love about us here.
We hope.
I think.
Maybe. And we're going to come back to this week's ridiculous death at the end for a special reason.
Yeah,
So, origins of the area. So, just keep saying so.
You do, that's the thing.
So, the area was first populated by an indigenous people called the Muisca, I hope, who lived in the area between what we now know as the Sumapaz Mountains and the Sierra Nevada del Cucuy.
Nice.
Thank you.
Done. They're numbered between 110,000 to 2 million people. Bit of a difference there.
A little bit.
But because of the lack of record keeping, many records were being lost to time and subsequent conquest that we can't really be sure.
No.
But that is quite a big difference.
It is. And the area, it had quite a fertile area called the Boga-ta Savannah, which supported the population. So it's mainly along where there used to be the Lake Humboldt and some other ancient lake beds that have actually been dated back to the Pleistocene era.
Wow.
Pleistocene, however you pronounce it.
Yeah.
But the ancient leg bakes? What? Ancient lake beds. What just happened?
I don't know, but you can't not speak.
My brain just went, nope. Ancient lake beds. So because of all that there, and obviously all the debris and the animal matter and plant matter at the bottom of the lake bed, they are quite fertile areas, which is obviously going to support the local population. They weren't really necessarily tribes, so to speak. I mean, I think the common use of the word tribe is a little bit misleading. They were known as the Muisca Confederation, which ruled in the north and south jointly by the Zac in the north, from what's now known as Dunja, and the Zipa in the south in Bogata, which is modern-day Bogota.
Nice.
Bogata. Yeah.
Stayed quite similar.
Yep.
It's believed that they may have evolved into agricultural community from a tribe of hunter-gatherers during the Herrera period, learning to cultivate, amongst other things, maize, potatoes and other tubers.
So basically stuff that can grow in the ground, the fertile soil.
Yeah. They also mined salt in Zipkira. I tried.
You tried, you did
try.
Zipkira, Nemacon and Tausa. And they've still got those mines today.
Yep, there is also evidence that they engaged in mining and trading of emeralds love an emerald, with neighbouring peoples, the Musu, and cotton with the Lak and the Ua.
La Chenua.
I was close. I tried.
You were good. You're doing good.
Apologies.
You're doing good. So, they were an agriculture and trade centre with a known religious structure, including a sacred city dedicated to the sun called Sugamuxi. And from religious artefacts and structures, we can actually gather that in the north, where the Zak ruled, was Sogamoso, which featured a sun temple, whereas the south, where the Zipa ruled, there was Chia, which focused more on worship of the moon. So you got sun and moon worship, which is pretty cool. Other structures and monuments seem to lean towards an astronomical worship or observation by the priests of the Muska. So all about the stars and like the movements of the heavens. So sun, moon, and stars. It's pretty cool.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Some notable places to look into that seem to fit this function.
The Cojines del Diablo.
Which were the devil's cushions.
Yep.
In Tunja, and there was a total of 25 columns located near the Villa del Leyva.
Yep, at Saquenzipa.
The latter one has a link to the legend whereby the mother goddess of the Muzica religion,
Bachwe, I think it is. She came out from the Igakwe lake holding a baby who would later grow to be her husband and help her to populate the earth. Interbreeding was a thing with
we're from
gods.
Norfolk, it's fine. Oh, I did myself a dirty.
Yeah, you did. So, looking into what we know of the mythology, many of the gods worshipped were astral or earth deities. So you had Chia, goddess of the moon, Zuche, goddess of the sun, lake and river gods, gods of the arts and the earth. So there's too many to go into here. There's a lot, but I'm probably going to be looking into this because I do have a slightly weird obsession with mythology.
You do. She knows a lot about a lot.
Yeah. There was a time when I used to be able to name exactly the main Egyptian deity, all the gods and goddesses, and what they were gods and goddesses of, and their animal representations.
Most of them were cats, so that can't... Is that cats or a dung beetle?
I apologise, there's a fly in my drink. Can you just carry on whilst I sort out my intruder?
Okay. It is also known that many ancient cultures, they had ties to and cared for their dead, with evidence of mummification and burial, with grave goods being practiced for higher civilian classes.
Sorry. I have returned. That creak was either me or the chair, I'm not sure.
The one thing they didn't have naturally occurring within the Muska Islands was gold, though there is evidence that they traded this from neighbouring tribes, which they turned into incredible examples of jewellery and votives, offerings to their gods, which thankfully have survived in the
Archaeological?
Thank you. Records, and can be seen in museum collections in the area.
Yeah,
that would be really cool to see.
It would be. I mean, they didn't have natural access to gold, but it does show then that they traded with areas that do. And we know from later what happened with the conquistadors and also the English Empire expansions as well, that the hunt for gold was a major, major thing. Is this safe to drink now?
Oh yeah, the fly... I'm not entirely sure why a fly went into your little cup.
Yeah, Britain in it.
Fair.
Flies everywhere.
Right, so now we go on to just a little thing known as the Spanish conquest. Spain were trying to get around. They were getting around.
Yeah, they wanted an empire. Different places wanted an empire. Spain were like, hey, we want one too. We're not going to massively inject our personal opinions with regards to this. We're going to try and look through it with the objectivity of historians. Mm-hmm. But please note that even though we are from an empire country, we don't necessarily agree with colonisation.
No, we don't.
There are better ways to do it.
Definitely.
Yes.
But back in the, 1400s, it was the thing.
Yeah, it was what was done. And I think that's the thing in that we don't agree with it now, but we can't impose our cultural leanings and cultural scripts back then because it was acceptable back then and isn't acceptable now. And that applies to a lot of things.
We shall say on that matter.
Yes.
Anyway, back to the Spanish conquest. In 1498, the Spanish conquest of South America began. As with any colonisation, there was a high cost to the lives of the indigenous population, not least of all the foreign diseases that were introduced by the
Conquistadors.
Thank you.
They pretty much wiped out entire civilizations just through the introduction of smallpox on blankets.
Yeah. A legend reached the ears of the Spanish of the city of gold,
El Dorado! Sorry, I got excited by saying El Dorado. I love the film The Legend of El Dorado.
This is located somewhere near Peru. As gold was of much greater value to the Spanish than it was to the indigenous population, the city must be found and taken. I mean, obviously, if you're gonna conquest.
If you're going to conquest the gold.
Oh. Yeah. There may be reasons why we haven't done this for a while.
I just think we're a little bit rusty.
I think that's why people keep coming back, because we aren't polished.
Exactly, we're rough and ready.
Don't speak to yourself.
I think we should make this PG-13 at least. Right, okay, so it's El Dorado. They were looking to conquest El Dorado.
Yes, and they found that there was lots of gold here.
Yeah.
The path here along the Rio Grande de la Magdalena passed through Colombia, and in 1556, approximately 800 soldiers, led by
Gonzalo Jiménez de Quesada,
went from Santa Maria to what is now Colombia.
De Quesada
took half of the troops overland, whilst the other half was led by
Diego de Obrino,
and he travelled up the Magdalena River and rendezvoused with the others at what is now...
I'm going to try this in one go.
I believe in you.
Barrancas-Bermejas, formerly Torre de las Barrancas-Bermejas.
So they didn't exactly make it any more easy to say.
No, they just took two words off and then
merged.
Put two together.
Very nice.
Yeah, it's one of those words where you're like, I can say it and I need to break it down syllable by syllable, but it's all one word. Yeah, so if I fudge that, I am very sorry.
It's fine.
Here they learned about a trade of cotton and fish in return for large salt cakes in the south. So De Quesada went to look for the villages where these salt cakes were made. So we're talking about the days before fridges and freezers and ice houses. So salt was a valuable commodity and for the preservation of food, which was essential for long sea voyages. So they get fish, they get like strips of meat and everything, and they'd put them in salt barrels. So if they could get it, that's almost as worth as much as gold.
I bet people back then never had cramp.
Probably not.
Because cramp means kind of like a lack of salt, doesn't it? So if you have some salt, you get cramp less. So when did people start getting cramp? When we got fridges? Freezers? Is that when people started getting cramp?
Possibly, and we also realised that too much salt is not necessarily good for you.
No.
But yeah, let's blame it on the fridges.
Yeah, sorry. We digress.
De Quesada's men didn't fare too well in the jungle, though. I mean, yes, in Spain they're used to warm, humid weather. It's a different kind of weather in jungles. So they were led by a man with, frankly, next to no military experience.
Fantastic.
De Quesada didn't have much. And by the time they reached the land of the Muisca Confederation, only 179 of the 800 men survived, having been forced to resort to eating the leather from their sword scabbards, as well as local fauna to survive. So they would eat like little local animals, but yeah, they got so hungry at one point where they would boil up and eat the leather from their own sword scabbards.
That is a lot of people that didn't survive.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Yes.
They were able, however, to amass a large amount of gold and emeralds en route, which is, handy.
Yeah.
They also took over
Kemenchatoka.
After the leader, the Zak, surrendered to them. They then continued on and raided
Sogamoso
and accidentally set the Sun Temple on fire. So they're not really doing, hearts and minds thing here.
I mean, how would you accidentally set a temple on fire?
Maybe they were lighting a candle to read, ye old parchment.
I mean, I think they
a letter from one's loved one.
I could be doing the Chibcha a real disservice, or the Muisca Confederation a real disservice here, but I think the majority of their stuff would have been carved rather than written. But also, I just get this mental image now of a previous incarnation of yourself as a conquistador soldier, just walking around a beautiful temple, and all of a sudden, whoops, tripped over a candlestick.
That is what I would do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
100%. Or looking at something pretty, dropped it, knock over the candlestick, boom, fire.
Yeah.
But even so, making light of it, it's a terrible thing to happen because it's their religious centre.
Yeah,
and
that was horrendous.
it would be devastating.
Yeah.
Once they'd reached Musca territory, they set up a camp in a place they later named the Valle de los Alcazera, or the Valley of the Fortress. No prizes for guessing what they established there. Clearly a market. Then they crossed southwest through the Musca lands and ended up in Boga-ta. The then leader of Boga-ta, called Tiscasusa, had already fled by this point in the face of the oncoming invasion. However, he didn't escape for long because he was killed by a Spanish soldier up north in Cajica.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, so he fled to escape them, didn't escape them. De Quesada then set about the colonial business of building a settlement, as they do, which became known as the New Kingdom of Granada, with Santa Fe as the capital. This later changed to Santa Fe de Bogata, a Spanish alteration of the original name in Musca, which was Boga-ta, which over time just got shortened to Boga-ta. The foundation date of the city was never actually recorded, or if it was, it hasn't been found yet. But the general consensus, however, is somewhere in August 1538.
It's not bad.
Yeah, that's a pretty good guess.
That's quite young.
That is quite young, yeah. But it's weird to think that the Incan and the Mayan empires, which you look at them and you kind of equate them with like the Romans and the Egyptians, that sort of era. But no, they were going to the mid 1500s, sometimes 1600s. They were still around. And you're like, when over here we had the Tudor dynasty and the Stuarts, we were going through the Renaissance era.
We're a very old country though.
Yeah, but
the British
they're an old
Britain
country
and
as
the
well.
British Empire.
Yeah, they're an old country. They were just kind of left alone for longer.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, I don't think there's enough stories in the world for that.
From here, the population grew rapidly with a mix of the European settlers, the remainder of the indigenous Musaka.
Moussaka, that's a food. Musca. Are you hungry?
I'm so sorry. I mean, I've been reading that De Quesada, and all I could think of was quesadilla, and I know it's wrong, and I'm not. I just can't. You know when you see a word and you can't unsee it?
Yeah. So you're just like quesadillas and moussaka.
I mean, when we have the difficult words, Carrie writes them down and tries to write them in brackets with how they sound phonetically, but my brain just isn't working.
Okay.
Please continue.
So the population grew rapidly with a mix of European settlers, remainder of the indigenous Musca, mixed ethnicity Indigeno-Europeans, known colloquially as the mestizos, and then slaves being brought in as part of further conquest and the whole transatlantic slave trade, which again we will not go into here. That deserves a podcast all of its own when we feel worthy enough to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is going to be a hard one. They were governed first by a mayor, or mayor if you're over the pond. Then a royal audience chairman who worked at the decree of the Spanish crown. Then a viceroy, which pretty much translates to in the place or in the name of the monarch. From about 1739 till 1819, when Colombia gained its independence from Spain under the leadership of Simón Bolívar.
Yay.
Well, I mean, yay for the Colombians, the Spanish, not so yay.
Yeah, not so
It didn't end well for them. Also, as you'll come to learn, Britain kind of got their fingers in that as well.
Must have done.
Not on the side of the Spanish.
Must have done. We're not always awful.
I mean, we're not great, but you know.
We're not always awful.
We did kind of do it for the wrong reasons, though.
But we shall get to that little tease.
So, let's talk about independence and terror, because independence is never straightforward. It's never a straight line, and things have to go wrong before they can go right.
Yeah, and something seemed to be spreading in the late 1700s with the American War of Independence that pitted the country against the British sovereign and the French Revolution. The Spanish weren't immune, and there was a lot of growing unrest amongst the Spanish colonies across America.
The first major uprising in Bogota was that of the Revolution of Comuneros, which originated from the Villa de Socorro in March in 1781. The Spanish authorities suppressed this and executed their leader, who was José Antonio Galán, but that did not stop the unrest. In 1794, Antonio Nariño translated and published the Declaration of Rights of Man and the Citizen, which was actually a document that was created by the French National Constituent Assembly as a result of the French Revolution. So we can see that that revolution kind of had an impact. So I think the American Revolution may have spurred on the French Revolution a little bit, and the French Revolution and the American Revolutions then spurred on the northern South America revolutions.
Tensions came to a head in 1810 when a group of Colombian Spaniards known as the Creoles.
Yeah, that's where the word comes from, Creoles.
That's cool. Huh. They went to borrow, or take by force, depending on your sources, a vase from the Spanish merchant called
Llorente. Or Lorente if you're anglicising it, but Llorente if you're saying it in Spanish.
This was refused. He wanted to keep it.
Yeah.
And it was used by the Creole party to fire up the locals against the Spanish and ended in a fist fight outside Llorente's shop. This is being considered as the Colombian version of the Boston Tea Party, the event that then snowballed into revolution.
Yeah. We will, when we do this, we'll put up a picture of the vase.
I need to stand up, sorry.
That's all right. Obviously, personal opinion is personal.
That's the point of a personal opinion.
I mean, it's nice. It's not necessarily a vase that I think would go in my house, but you know.
What colour is it?
It's mostly white, and it looks like, if I remember rightly, it looks like almost like a little house or a bird box with little bits of trees, like twigs and flowers and everything on it. It's a nice vase.
And then you put flowers in that?
Yeah, you put flowers in it, and it's like decorative vase.
That sounds pretty.
Yeah.
But it sounds like it wouldn't go in a house, it needs to be somewhere grander.
Well, they plan to have a dinner for someone who the Spanish wouldn't necessarily agree with. And they wanted to use that to put flowers as a centrepiece on the table.
Oh, okay.
It's quite nice. But they also knew that because of who it was they were invited to dinner, there was no way Llorente was going to allow it. So they kind of technically used it as a way to cause these issues. So they knew he wasn't going to say yes, and they asked, and then they turned around and said, oh, that Llorente, these Spanish, they say no to everything, terrible people. Next thing you know, someone punched Llorente in the nose. Yeah, it just kind of went from there, really.
Fancies.
Yeah. Over the next 5 years, you then had an era known as the Patria Boba, or the Silly Homeland. And that's just because the Creole people fought amongst themselves.
Like Civil War, then?
Yes, but no, because Civil War would be, they wanted to get rid of the Spanish. So they should have fought the Spanish, but they didn't. They fought amongst themselves, which is kind of counterintuitive to revolution. But what it did do is it created the first two political parties, the Federalists and the Centralists.
Yeah, and Spain wasn't too impressed by the unrest of one of her colonies. However, so a pacifying expedition led by Pablo Morillo was sent over in 1815 to try and end the tensions by whatever means seemed best at the time.
Yeah, he basically had a blank check, which is never a good thing.
No, this kicked off an era of repression and prolonged independence war. This came to a head and was eventually ended by
Simón Bolívar and Francisco de Paula Santander at the battles of Vargas and Boga-ta. Or Boga-ta. Yeah.
Yep.
You might recognise the name Santander.
Yeah, I was about to say, has that got anything to do with the bank?
Possibly. I didn't look into that, to be honest with you, but they probably... I know there's an area, like a construction flats, communal housing area, that's named after him there, so it wouldn't surprise me that the bank also comes originally from Colombia and started. Yeah.
That's cool.
We're not going to go into too much detail about the battles, but we're just going to give a quick overview because those are pretty important. The Battle of Vargas Swamp was set near Pipa and was fought on the 25th of July 1819. Simón Bolívar commanded an army formed out of Venezuelans and New Grenadans or Neo-Grenadians. The plan was to stop the arrival of Spanish forces at Bogata into one of their docks. The troops had to climb the Pramo de Pisba, which is a mountain range, and cross a swamp before they got there. So they were absolutely exhausted.
Well, yeah.
However, they still managed a victory against the Spanish. They did have some help, however, from the 2nd Rifles of the British Legion, led by James Rooke, who bolstered their forces, allowing the revolutionaries to go on victory. So basically, they were facing defeat at that moment. Rooke and his rifles turned up, and they kind of bolstered their forces a little bit, took some of the flak, took some heavy casualties, and that then gave the revolutionary forces time to regroup, get their lances out, and then it turned it into a victory for them.
That's cool.
Yeah.
The Battle of
Boga-ta
followed on from this on the 7th of August 1819 and has been cited as the decisive battle in the revolution. Again, it was Simon Bolivar and his second Francisco Santander leading a joint army of Venezuelans and
Neo-Grenadians.
If I stop mid-word, it's not happening. With the help from the British Legion versus the Spanish Royalist Army,
led by Jose Barrero and Francisco Jimenez.
The battle ended.
It ended in defeat for the Spanish, and it only took 2 hours. Which, you know, I mean, it sounds like a long time, but 2 hours for a battle is pretty quick.
Yeah.
And it's pretty decisive. It did set off a chain reaction with a number of smaller skirmishes that eventually resulted in the then Viceroy, Juan de Samano, escaping the country and the resultant end of the Spanish Empire in northern Latin America. It wasn't just Colombia, there was like Venezuela, Guatemala, Ecuador, I think, as well. They all got involved. And to this day, the 7th of August is a national holiday in Colombia to commemorate the battle and the results.
So that's next, as if we're recording this now, on the 31st July to go out tomorrow, next Saturday, a week today.
Yeah, so
enjoy your celebrations.
Yeah.
What's that, 212 years since 1819?
Yeah, so happy...
No, 202. 212, 202.
If you're leaving the words to me, I'm leaving the maths to you.
Fair. We complement each other.
We do.
Well, enjoy your 202nd Independence Day.
Yes, go Colombia. Woo. Anyway, yeah, I'm not calling it that.
Following independence victory in 1819, Bolivar created Gran Colombia from the formation of Venezuela, Grenada and Quito. This lasted until Bolivar's death in 1830.
Yeah, so he had some time to enjoy the fruits of what sort of enjoy the fruits of what he'd done.
Yeah, sometimes with revolutions, reform happens more or less overnight after a tipping or boiling point that has been reached. In other cases, though, things take a bit more time to get going towards the new normal. This was the case in Colombia.
Yeah, despite technically achieving independence in 1819, things seemed to move at a snail's pace until about 1849, so 19 years after Bolivar's death. When reforms started to happen, such as the abolition of slavery, the introduction of religious and trade freedom, and other such reforms that were brought in by radical liberalists.
Yeah, and not everyone will see eye to eye, though, and some people will want more definite reforms faster than others. Again, this was the case in Colombia. The trouble started between the two main political parties, the Liberal Party and the National Party. Later, when the latter lost their political footing, they were ousted by the Conservative Party, who again came to loggerheads with the Liberal Party.
Conservatives versus Liberals. Why does that sound familiar? In 1886, a constitution, known oddly enough as the Constitution of 1886, was put in place, and it began a progress called the Regeneración. This was spurred on by a chap called Rafael Núñez, and the intention was to, more or less, reverse a constitution put in place by the previous era, which, amongst other things, encouraged the separation of church and state. So the old constitution encouraged that. Núñez, however, and the Regeneración embraced the motto one nation, one goal, one God. This restored Catholicism as the official religion in Colombia and restored increased privileges and expenses to the church. The Catholic Church was also permitted to once again step in with education, censor certain materials from the curriculum across the country, and even made it so that members of the clergy were immune from national prosecution, so they would only be held accountable to canon law, not the laws of man.
Oh, that's a dangerous one.
Yep.
That sets a dangerous
So many
precedent.
times things go wrong when religion and state step hand in hand. But, personal opinion. This was spearheaded by the Conservatives and didn't go down too well with the Liberals, specifically the more radical ones, and because they had previously expelled the Catholic Church from Colombia in 1858.
Oh.
They're the ones that wanted the separation of religion and state. Tensions rose, turned into anger, which turned into violence, which leads to hate, which leads to the dark side. The presidential election in 1898 seems to have been the final match that was struck. And on the 17th of October 1899, the Liberal Party announced the beginning of an official insurrection. Thus, the 1,000 Days War began, the final and bloodiest of Colombia's civil wars.
It took until the attempt by the Liberal Party to seize control of the city of
Bucaramanga
on the 11th of November to active warfare to begin, and it lasted until the signing of the Treaty of Neerlandia on the 24th of October 1902, and the Treaty of
Wisconsin. It's a ship, Wisconsin.
Oh, that's cool. On the 21st of November 1902. The latter officially signalling the end of the war. The 1,000 Days War is estimated to have resulted in approximately 120,000 casualties.
Yeah, hence like the bloodiest civil war.
Yeah. So in just under a month?
Yeah. So the 1,000 days. 1,000 days is more than a month. It took about 3 years.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Sorry.
But it got to the point. The reason the Wisconsin was there is that it got to the point where, to protect their interests in the Panama Canal, the U.S. Navy had to step in.
Wow.
Yeah. So it was through one of the like the right hand men of Theodore Roosevelt that under him the Treaty of Wisconsin was signed on the ship Wisconsin.
That's cool.
Yeah. From 1886 through the civil conflicts and all the way to the present day, the Republic of Colombia has remained, with Bogota as her political and cultural centre. Once peace was restored, work began on the economy, using the new railroad links to support the transport of goods, as well as artisan products and artistry, improving Bogota's economy as well as promoting her skill and culture. A lot, like previous to that, Bogota was a city of artisans. And there wasn't a huge amount growing with the economy because of that. So it's kind of niche products, but with railroads, they could get that out to more people. So that did massively help. And by her fourth centenary in 1938, the population of Bogota had reached over 333,000 people. Construction and infrastructure grew to make way for the growing population.
Nice. It wasn't all smooth sailing, however, and when a candidate from the Conservative Party took office in 1948, things became violent again, resulting in the near destruction of downtown Bogota.
Yeah, so there's still those political skirmishes ongoing, and like they take one step forward, two steps back.
Yeah.
Improvements in communication and media over the last couple of decades have allowed Bogota to step onto the national stage. By 1973, the population had reached 2,500,000 inhabitants, and as of 2005, including the urban sprawl surrounding it, her population has reached 7,881,156.
That is a growth and a half, isn't it?
Yeah, massively. I haven't got the most recent population figures, but that was as of 2005.
Yeah, which means it would have grown in the last 16 years.
Yeah. Definitely.
Colombia still experiences some measure of instability, particularly economically as a result of ongoing political conflicts, but she is steadily growing and improving.
She is indeed, and with Bogota at her centre, so is Bogota.
It sounds like a really interesting place.
It does, and it sounds like there's a lot of history there, and I'd love to go for like the history about the Musical Federation, to see some of those salt mines and everything, because they're still going from those days. That's incredible. Cool. But also to see the impact of like the Spanish conquest and everything. They've got memorials at the two main battle sites that you can go and see, and it just seems like it's a really nice place to visit.
Yeah, definitely. Be on the list.
Yeah, 100%. So that's it for Bogota. Before we continue and go to our Ridiculous Death segment, let's have a listen to some other podcasts that you might be interested in.
Hey, do you want to hear about Scott who came back from the dead?
Or why Nelson wrote a book called Unlucky Sperm Club?
How about Terry, whose mother pretty much exchanged her for drugs?
Season 3 of Culturally Speaking is back, where we share amazing stories of life-changing experiences and adversities that truly celebrate human resilience.
Check out Culturally Speaking now on all podcast platforms, and remember to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you listen. You'll also find us on Instagram at Culturally Speaking Podcast.
Welcome back to a nice cup of history. Normally at this point we would do a ridiculous death.
Yep, we would. It's just a light-hearted over something that's not light-hearted that we do at the end of every one of our podcasts.
Yeah, it's just amusing ways that people have removed themselves from the gene pool or have failed to remove themselves from the gene pool through amazing survivals.
However,
I'm
going to applaud Colombia here. We can find that nobody has died or survived in a ridiculous fashion.
Yeah, I mean, the fact that Boga-ta is still going after everything that she's had, that is pretty impressive in itself. That is an impressive survival.
Yeah.
And, props to you for the independence. Again, impressive survival. However, nobody died in a stupid way.
I mean, if you're listening and you know of one, please let us know. Email us at cupofhistory@outlook.com. We would love to hear. Makes us sound really odd. We would love to hear.
We would love to hear that someone had died, but we would like to, share the irony of it or the amusing way that they've done it, so that we can hopefully, prevent people from being stupid in the future.
Yes, and maybe do our own little version of the Darwin Awards.
Yeah.
History Awards of ridiculous deaths.
Yeah. These are the tea leaves that didn't make it. Yeah.
Listen to that coming soon. End of the year. We'll do an award for that. So let us know. And if you're listening and you think there's a ridiculous death from your country, your town, your city, at any point in time, please get in touch. You can email us, like I said, at cupofhistory@outlook.com, or you can message us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, all at Cup of History.
We do also take requests for episodes, so we've got an interesting episode coming up soon on the Salem witch trials.
We do.
And we also have a special request that I am really looking forward to, of the story of Beowulf.
Yes, definitely. And I guess that's it for now. Thank you for being patient with us. We know it's been a little while, but like I said, we have some great episodes coming up, and I believe our next one coming out in 2 weeks, hopefully, should be a dark cup of history, and that's where we're delving into the Salem witch trials. So, until then, we'll speak to you soon.
Bye.
Bye.